I speak to everyone in the same way, whether he is the garbage man or the president of the university. Albert Einstein. All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Do me a favor, folks. If you enjoy the show, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, hit the bell so that you never miss an episode. I see the audio is not working once again on these little buttons. So, whatever, it is what it is. We'll do our best here. All right. So it's so funny. I was looking at Twitter yesterday, social media, and there's these videos of Trump in the garbage truck, and it made me think, and I realized, I've got some funny stories about job interviews. So I decided I'm going to tell some stories about those. And it's funny, right before the show, I realized I made a mistake. This was supposed to be like one of my Liberty Dad memoirs. So I kind of messed up on that, but that's okay. So kind of think of it like a Liberty Dad memoir. It's just not titled that way, but it is what it is. Um, and good comment there. I'm a little off today. I don't know what's going on here. Voice is messed up, and I'm a little off. But yes, literally that. I cannot talk today. This is gonna be a rough day. Okay, we'll get this. We'll get through it. All right. So that Liberty lady says, don't forget next week Liberty Dad is at noon. That is correct. Very quick announcement here. Um, my wife is going out of town tomorrow. She is going to Spain. I get to be home, and I'm on dad duty for a week, a little bit over a week. So all next week, the show will be at noon on Tuesday, election day. It may actually not, there may not be a show simply because my son has a field trip and I will be gone most of the day for that field trip. So I don't know. We will see. If I can manage to squeeze one, pre-record one, I will do that. But I don't really know if I'll be able to. And of all days to be out and want to try to do a pre-recording, election day is kind of a tough one. So I don't know. Maybe I'll do one at night. I know that some people have asked me to be on their stream at night. So maybe I'll just kind of point you in that direction and say, hey, catch me here, catch me there, whatever. So I don't know. I will figure this out. But just so you know, I will all this the show will not be at 7:30 in the morning, bright and early next week. It will be at noon. Okay, so let's get into this. I want to tell you some stories, and then we're going to tie this into the election. Okay. And these are some personal life stories about me getting going to interviews. So the first one, I'm roughly, how old am I? 19, maybe 20. And I was working in a factory, and I didn't particularly care to work in this factory. It was a stamping plant. And I would go in and I would grab a piece of metal and I put it into the machine and I hit the buttons and the machine would come down. I would stamp it. I would grab it, it'd shape it and I'd grab it and I'd move it to the next. And then they would do their thing and just go on down the line. And I didn't particularly care for it. And sometimes when I couldn't do that work, I had to do other jobs. Like there was one where some of their parts were coming out slightly incorrect. And so we needed to take a grinder and just literally just grind all these pieces. And that was actually probably the worst thing that I had to do at that particular job because when you're grinding metal like that, you're getting like metal bits all over you and stuff. And so it was no fun. I had all this metal on me. I was wearing safety gear and whatnot, but still you take home some of the metal shavings and stuff. It wasn't pleasant. And you're wearing you're in a factory and you're wearing all this gear and it's hot and it's there's nothing. So I had previously had some restaurant experience and there was a Burger King that was opening up brand new inside of a Travel Centers of America truck stop. And so it would be franchised. And somebody reached out, I think from a restaurant that I used to work at, and they were like, hey, you should go down and try to apply and see if you could get management job." And I was like, "Really?" And they were like, "Yeah, you did really well while you're here at the restaurant, and we understand that you had to move on and stuff, but, maybe there's an opportunity there for you." So I was like, "All right, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go down." And so I went down and I put in an application. So it was interesting because I actually had to pass this location on my way home from work. So what I did was on my way home, I went out and I filled out an application, and then I I think I got an interview. I think I'm talking about the order. I know I got an interview, but I'm trying to think of the order in which things happened. I believe I got an interview, and then it was like wait and see if they were going to hire you or if the other interviewees were better or whatever. So every day, like literally every day after work, I would drive by and I would stop in and I would just be like, "Hey, Mister So and So," it was a guy, and I was like, "Did I get the job?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're still working this out." And I just kept doing that, right? I just kept asking every day. I eventually got hired, and the guy told me later, he said, "The only reason I hired you," he goes, "I wasn't gonna hire you." He goes, "But the only reason I hired you is because you showed up every day and you got on my nerves, and I figured you must really want this job that bad, and so maybe you do a good job." Now, here's the other kicker. My first paycheck, I don't remember how much I got hired for, like, I don't know, we'll just say $6.50 an hour. I don't remember how much it was, but it wasn't much. And I didn't get management, by the way. So, but I got hired for like $6.50 or something like that. And I got my first paycheck and I'm checking it out and I'm looking at it, I'm like, something's not right. And I was like, this is this is too much, or my math is bad. And so I went to the guy and I was like, "Hey, I think we have a problem here." I was like, "My pay is incorrect. It's more than I'm expecting. Like I'm supposed to get this much, and and it doesn't seem right." And he goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "After your first week of work and how well you did, I decided to bump you up a quarter." So I got like a raise on my first week of the job. Okay. And this was after I pestered him. Now you might ask yourself, you might say, "Well, DL, why'd you do that? Like, why would you want a job so bad to work at Burger King?" Well, one, I'm 19, so I have no job. I'm working at a factory that I don't like, and my job experience is very limited. So for me at the time, getting this job, I mean, I wouldn't call it a dream job, but it was definitely a job that I wanted. It's one that I preferred to what I had at the time. So I went all in. And I did that because I had heard my mother tell me her stories about getting a job. I mean, like, she told me about one time she really wanted to work at a place, and she called them up and she said, "I called them." I think she said she started out calling them like every 2 weeks or something like that, once a month, and then she started calling them like every 2 weeks, and then she got to the point where she was calling them every single day, and they finally gave her a job. Right? And so that like, I just did that same thing. I was like, "Well, apparently if you want the job, you just keep going." You just keep showing up like, "Hey, I'm here. Did I get the job yet?" Right? And you pester them. So that's what I did. Now scroll forward a few years and I'm not working in factories now, and I've worked at several factories by this time. I'm also not working in restaurant. I decided that I wanted to get this job at Rent a Center, and it was gonna pay like $10.50 an hour or something like that. So for me at this time in the city that I live in, that's a really good pay, right? Like this is in like 2000s. Yeah, something like that, early 2000s. And so this is really good pay in the city that I lived in for my experience, my age and all that good stuff. So I show up. Now I show up in a tie and a white shirt and some slacks. And it's funny because I was wearing like these um like dark green pants, and I believe I had a blue tie. And they handed me this test. It was like one of those, like a almost like a math test, but not quite. It was like asking you a bunch of questions, and I just did it really quickly, and they were like, "Dude, that was fast," and they were like flipping out, and then they were like, "So where's your scratch paper?" And I was like, "What scratch paper?" And I know, and like it's not like I was solving quadratic equations. Okay, I mean, I was just stuff you could, I think that a, a decently intelligent person could do in their head. So I did. And I was just busy trying to do it quickly, right? So they were really impressed. But unbeknownst to me, what wasn't impressive was my size, because I'm 5'3" and I weigh 120 pounds. And they're like, dude, this job means you're going to be taking furniture in and out of houses. So they're kind of concerned, like in the background, whether or not I could manage this job. So they said, would you be willing to go on a test with, like just go out and just kind of see how you handle with this guy, one of our other employees? And I was like, sure. Now he was a much bigger guy than me. He was probably 4 or 5 inches taller than me, probably a good 60 pounds more than me. Pretty built. Like he had some big arms and, big chest. He was a big boy. And so I went out with him, and I think we did a couple, where you go and you pull um, uh, why am I drawing a blank on it? Where you get it and you take it back, right? Like, I don't want to say, oh man, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but anyway, so we went out and we're grabbing furniture, and I'm carrying it, moving it, doing whatever I need to do. So I ended up getting the job. And the same guy, he later told me, he's like, dude, we weren't sure you could handle it because you're so tiny. He said, and so they asked me to go out with you, and they said, see what he's got. And he goes, I threw everything at you. And he goes, and you held your own. You were able to just, like you were carrying couches and, not carrying refrigerators, but, all the different furniture. Like, he's like, you were handling like a champ. He was like, so you passed your test and you passed this physical test, right? And I credit that to my mom wanting to rearrange the furniture like once a month. So she'd be like, hey, come over here and help me move this piano. So we had to move the piano, all the way across the room to somewhere else where she wanted it. And so, like, that's just for me. I was like, yeah, I'll do this because I want the job. That's what I want. I wanted the job, so I did, and I got the job, and I got that good pay that I wanted, so it worked out great. So now Let me scroll forward many, many more years. So this is now like 11 years ago or so, somewhere around there. I'm living in Charlotte, and um, I'm engaged to my now wife, and so she had moved down to Jacksonville for a new job, and we had kind of worked out this plan of like, okay, I'll do this, and I'll come, I'll stay up here, I'll do some work, and part of it included this anticipation that I might get a job. So a friend of mine, when I decided that I wanted to do software development, he helped. He was kind of like a mentor, and so he helped me out with this. And so then he ended up getting me an interview at his company. It was a bank, and I would have been on a team that was responsible for generating like all the reports and stuff like that that they had to send to the federal government. So they have to like build these tests to test and then generate these reports and then send them off to the government. So to test whether or not they're ready for financial hits and all this other stuff. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I go to this interview, and now, mind you, at this time, I've had some training as best as I could with software development. I was studying and I was reading and I was watching videos and I was like, sitting down with tutors and stuff like that. So I was doing the best I could to learn this stuff. And so now I go to this interview, and it was in 3 parts. It was a 2-hour interview, and it was in 3 parts. The first part, I met with 2 guys, and that was going to be their database team. Like these two guys were the guys that maintained and oversaw the database. And so I sat down with them and I chit chatted, whatever, and that seemed to go pretty well. The next part was I sat down with the development team, and there was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 of those guys. And so I'm sitting in there and they're asking me questions and I'm answering to the best of my ability. And there was one particular question that I will never ever forget my later embarrassment over this. I'm going to do my best to describe it to you folks if you're not a software developer. If you are a software developer and you're listening, you're going to know right away what's up. So, they're asking me, they're like, "All right, suppose you wanna write some code, and this code is gonna calculate the area of a circle." And they said, um, kind of write out some code, and there's a thing called pseudocode, which is just kind of like you're kind of giving them the logic rather than actual code. So you can, and sometimes you can use a combination of pseudocode and real code. So it's you basically what you're trying to demonstrate is that you can write out about what it would look like so that they could envision it. And the idea is, you know, imagine you're sitting around with a team and somebody's like, "Hey, I got an idea. What would this work?" And then they scribble something out, and it's not the end result, but enough to give everybody an idea what the end result might look like, right? That's the point of this. And so I go up there and I set it all up, and there's something called a oh man, there's something called data types. And data types are just basically how does a computer understand certain information? So my name would be like a string. Okay. My age would be an integer, a number. Right. And then, like, let's say the amount of money in your bank account, we might call that a decimal. Or there's, some other things that you can put that under. So when I did that, I used a particular data type, and I don't remember which one it was, but I used a particular data type, which is again basically tells the computer what kind of information are we working with? Are we working with just a bunch of letters? Are we working with something that should be, a whole number? Are we working with something that's like a decimal? Those kind of things, because then it kind of it does its thing to ensure that it has the resources and whatnot. So they asked me about the data type that I used. And they were like, "So why did you use that one?" Now I used the correct one for a decimal. And they said, "Why did you use that?" And my answer was, "Because it's bigger." And it just didn't click. I don't even know why I said that, but that's what I said. And they were like, "Okay." And then as I'm leaving, now I had some other issues, I because it was a 2-hour interview, and it was my first time ever, and I was actually at a bank, so it wasn't even like a junior position, okay? This was like a more serious position. I just got lucky that I knew somebody that could help me, score this particular opportunity. So then after their interview, I interview with the team leader, the manager, and, so I had that interview, and that seemed to go fine. So like, after 2 hours, I'm leaving, I'm talking to the recruiter, and I was like, "Dude," I was like, "I don't think I did so well." And then it hit, and it almost hit me about, the answer, but I knew that I hadn't done so well. And so I was like, and, he's telling me, he's like, "All right, well, maybe this, maybe that, whatever, blah, blah." So this was a Friday. And the intent was, since my now wife was down in Jacksonville, I was gonna travel down from Charlotte to Jacksonville and visit her over the weekend. And so, um, I start to leave. I go to leave, and I'm literally getting on the highway. I'm on the on-ramp, and then that whole "it's bigger" clicked, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I said that. Like, what?" And then I started thinking about some of the other answers, and I was like, "Oh my god. Oh my god." So I pull over, okay? I'm like 10 minutes out from the interview. I pull over on the side of the highway, the side of the on-ramp. I grab my phone, and I just start punching out like the correct answer to every single question that I think I didn't do so well on. And I shot that email out, to the hiring manager. And I was like, "Dude," I was like, "I don't think I did so well in this, blah, blah, blah," and so here. And so I send out this email before, I'm on the side of the highway, just punching out this email. Well, I didn't get the job, unfortunately. So they were not very forgiving, or they found somebody they liked better, whatever the case, maybe a combination. I didn't get that job, but it was a very good experience for me. So what am I telling you with all this? Notice the trend here. I'm putting whatever I have into getting the job. That's what I'm doing. And it didn't matter whether I wanted, whether I wanted to get a job at Burger King, at Rent-A-Center, or at a big bank making lots of money. And I would have. It's unfortunate, but it's okay. I recovered since then. So I'm doing whatever I can to get the job. And at each level, there are different things that I can do, right? On one hand, for Burger King, I just showed up repeatedly. Then that's it. And then I was a really good worker when I got there, but I just showed up repeatedly. And then on the next job, when it came to Rent-A-Center, I was willing to go out and let them give me a test run and see how well I could handle carrying couches and furniture and pulling refrigerators in and out of houses. And then that third job, of course, I was willing to just stop on the highway and immediately send an email right away and say, "Hey, look, I didn't do so well. Here, let me follow this up, with the best the best that I can. And here's all the answers that I think I didn't do so well on and what I would have liked to have said." So that's the kind of attitude that I have when it comes to getting a job. And after the intermission, we're going to tie this into the election because I saw some very interesting things online. But for now, we're going to have intermission, and let's see. That Liberty lady asked me, stamping like B Rabbit and 8 Mile. Yes, but without the eloquent rhyming and rapping. Okay, I cannot do that. I've tried it, and I've been laughed at by my friends because we know better. So yes, similarly. And yes, good things come in small packages. That's what my short Sicilian mom would always tell me. Yes, look, I'm a small guy, but I try not to let that get in the way. I mean, there are certainly some things that are just, it's the way they are. People aren't going to be asking me to get something off the top shelf for them. That's cool. But, I try to hold my own. I make sure that I don't let my short stature, my scrawny little frame, that doesn't get in the way of things that I want to accomplish. So, and believe it or not, whatever limitation that you have, you can probably overcome it well enough. You may not be able to overcome it completely in the way that somebody who doesn't have that limitation can. You're probably not, but maybe you might be able to, right? Spud Webb was a small guy. And, if I'm dating myself now, but Spud Webb was like 5'4", I think, played in the NBA. Like, how often it might be 5'5", I don't remember, but he was short for a basketball player. And he had hops. All right. So, yes, time surfing alien says, "I'm sure if you practice, you will get the hang of it." That's true. That's true. Practice, practice, practice. I've practiced giving interview answers. I've practiced all kind of stuff, stand in the mirror and practice, practice asking a girl out. I mean, not lately, but practice. When you're not good at something, practice. All right. So we're going to go to this intermission, and then we'll come back, and then we'll tie this into the election, and we'll see what we learn. All right. Oh, of course, the audio is not working. Let's fix that. Give it a second here.
Libertarians in Georgia.
All right.
Candidate receives over 50%. Then the top two candidates head to a runoff. Now we know this race will head to a runoff.
New focus on the influence of libertarians in Georgia's Senate race. There's another player in the mix.
Voters deserve a chance to have their voices heard, and they shouldn't have to be lumped into one box or the other and have to be shamed into voting into two parties.
These two major parties aren't addressing their pain.
Themselves said the Inflation Reduction Act wouldn't actually reduce inflation. Are you actually reading the bills, or are you just taking Chuck Schumer's word for it when you vote on these things? We obviously need to audit the Fed. Once people get a little bit more education about what the Federal Reserve does, they'll want to see it ended. We claim to be the light of liberty unto the world, and if we seek to hold that mantle, we have to fix our broken immigration system. Big Pharma is subsidized to the tune of billions of dollars a year by our government. The only thing Democrats and Republicans can agree on is how to spend your money out of thin air and devalue our dollar. We need to bring market forces into healthcare that are going to lower the prices. I believe that we need true justice reform at every level, from the police to the courts to the prosecutors. And we need to do away with mandatory minimums. We need to do away with qualified immunity so that law enforcement can be held accountable in a court of law just like any of us. And that's something that I fought for. I've gotten tear gas in the streets while I protest for justice reform. Don't take politicians' advice for your healthcare. Take your doctor's advice. Why is that the radical idea, not the rational idea? I want to take power out of the hands of government and return it to each and every one of you, because that's where it resides. If not voted was actually on the ballot, they would win nearly every election in this country. Most of the people who vote represent themselves as independent, so it's important that we have voices that are independent of the two parties on stage. I want you to be able to start a small business. I want you to have control over your own body, and I want you to be able to live your life as your authentic self in peace. I'm Chase Oliver, a candidate for president, and I approve this message.
All right, we're back, and let's see here. Oh, cancel that. There we go. All right, trying to do some things in the background. Realized I forgot to set a couple of things up this morning. Okay, so let me show you. Let me show you a clip, a couple clips of, and then I'm going to show you some Twitter comments because I thought they were kind of amusing. So we all know that Trump showed up in a trash can, garbage can, or a garbage truck. He didn't show up in a trash can. He's not Oscar the Grouch. All right, but he showed up in a garbage truck, and look, these are political stunts. That's exactly what they are, all of them. But there's some value add there, and there's something to be said about these. So let me show you this first video, and hopefully all the audio and everything's going to work. But if not, we'll get it worked out. All right, of course, things aren't what they're supposed to be. So let me do. So this one is actually of Vivek. And this was interesting. So I don't know why the audio is giving me such a pain this morning, but we will work through it. I apologize, folks. Okay, so there we are. Back this up a little bit, and bam, there we are.
All right. Let's do it, man. I got it. Yeah. Tell me, what are we doing here? Okay. Right up to here.
Around. Pretty much right there. Always lift the lid open.
Is it on?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Lift open. And then what are we doing?
Pull them both out.
Pull them both out. Doing it right? Pull this one back too, or you good?
Yeah, you're good right now.
Sweet.
Wait till you go all the way up.
Pretty good machinery, actually. It kind of works. Should I pull it back again?
Now just pull. This goes up.
Should I pull it?
Yeah, pull it out.
Pull it out? All right, man. Let's do it. Thank you. Looks pretty good.
All right. So that was a pretty good video. And why do I say that? Now, let me preface everything. I am still voting for Chase Oliver, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to talk about some of these videos that come out of Vivek and of Trump, messing around with garbage cans and stuff like that. And this comes after. So there was the comment. There was the comedian attended a Trump rally, and he made a joke about Puerto Ricans, or Puerto Rico specifically, and it didn't go so well. It's been all over the news. Then and then I believe it was Joe Biden came out and said, Puerto Rico's not garbage. Garbage is people that are voting for Trump, or something along that line. Right. And so now they're capitalizing on this whole garbage conversation. Right. And so they're like, oh, well, we'll go out and we'll do some garbage collection. Now, what I like about this video, even though it's a stunt, and I get it, I'm not going to vote for somebody just because they worked with the garbage man. Okay. Like, that's like the job of a garbage man is an important job, but it is entirely different than the job of president or any job in the White House. Right. Like that we're electing people to do. So they're entirely different jobs. So just because you are able to go out and, do some things with the trash man doesn't make you qualified to work in the White House. Okay. In itself. So, but what's cool about this video is that Vivek doesn't really pretend like he knows what he's doing. And he seems, in my opinion, very comfortable with saying, like, look, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, do I pull the lever? Okay. Do I pull it again? Wow, this really works. Right. And he seems very comfortable being ignorant. And I don't say ignorant in a negative way. Like, we're all ignorant of something. You know, once upon a time, I had no knowledge of working in restaurants or working in factories, you know, in certain factories. Like, I had no knowledge. But then after I got in, I was not as ignorant as I once was, you know, and now there are some other things and many other things out in the world for which I am ignorant of. And the best thing that we can do is, in general, is to be comfortable with our ignorance. You know, now you shouldn't stay ignorant if it's an area where you need to learn. You know, it's like if you get into a new job, you're going to be ignorant of that job more than likely. And there is no excuse to remain ignorant in that particular case. Now, there might be other areas where it's okay to be ignorant and stay ignorant, right? Like, I don't know how to work on modern cars with all the electronics and technology that they have in them. I know how to, I've worked on cars in the past, you know, way long ago, when, you know, the sensors and things were just like a little thing that you unplugged and plugged a new one in. You know, and it's okay. Like, I have no intention of working on cars. It's just not my thing. So it's okay to remain ignorant in that particular in that particular area. All right, so let me show you another video, and we're gonna walk through this one. We'll walk through these other ones. Hopefully it goes well. Let's see. Why is it so tiny? Oh goodness, it's this is not working. Let's get this. Where are we at here? Give me a second. Why is I lost it. Okay, I don't know what happened to it. Let me see here. Let's try it again. Nope, that's not it. All right, there we go. And let's get this. Oh, it's such a pain. The audio is not working today, but we are going to get it, and it'll be just fine. All right, let's try that. No.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
All right, that was a very quick one. All that work for a tiny little video, like little 6-second. All right, this one's a little bit longer. Still probably going to have some issues with it, but that's okay. Let's see here. Let's see what we get. Oh, look at that. Now we just got to get the audio working, and then we'll be in good shape. So let's give me just a second. Click some of these buttons. All right, there we go.
250 million Americans.
All right, sorry about this. All right.
250 million Americans are not garbage.
All right, so the man shows up wearing his vest from when he was driving around in a garbage truck. And the first thing he says is, hey, 250 million Americans are not garbage. This is capitalizing on. This is the version, in my opinion, of him saying, I want this job so bad, I'll go and, you know, pretend to pick up trash. And I think he did, or maybe he just drove around. I'm not really sure. Right. But him and people on his team are acting quickly in response, you know, real time to the changes that are happening on the campaign trail. And this is that version of, you know, hey, will you go out and throw around some furniture with us so we can see how well you do? Right? That's this version of that. And even though I'm not voting for him, I can respect it. Does that make him the average Joe? No. He's not suddenly now more connected to the average Joe because he drove in a trash truck or because Vivek pulled a few levers, right? Like that doesn't, and I think most people recognize this. So, all right. So let's continue listening to what he has to say.
This week, Kamala has been comparing her political opponents to the most evil mass murderers in history. And now, speaking on a call for her campaign last night, crooked Joe Biden finally said what he and Kamala really think of our supporters. He called them garbage. No way. No way. And they actually mean it, even though, without question, my supporters are far higher quality than Crooked Joe or Lion Kamala. Higher
quality. So there he goes again with his nicknames. You know, he's always been famous for his nicknames. I think they were a little bit more clever, or maybe they felt more clever when he first hit the scene. But yeah, so like that's what's going on here. Like he's just capitalizing on it. None of this reflects whether he, is fit for the job, whether his policies are going to be any good. None of that. It doesn't. None of that is here. All he's doing is looking to get people's votes. That's it, right? His policies are already out there, right? He's already talked about them. We're days away from the election. Now it's just a matter of making sure that you capitalize on every moment you can. Now, he also appeared on Joe Rogan. And what was interesting about appearing on Joe Rogan is that he was on there for 3 hours. Now, I didn't watch it. And I talked to some other people and they were like, yeah, I mean, you can watch it, but you know, like you're not going to get anything out of it, DL. That's what I was told. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go with you. So then the word came out that Joe Rogan had invited Kamala Harris out. So I'm going to read to you what he said. So he put out a tweet. And in his tweet, he said, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. He said, they offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have had to travel to her, and they only wanted to do an hour. I strongly feel the best way to do it is in the studio in Austin. My sincere wish is to just have a nice conversation and get to know her as a human being. I really hope we can make it happen. So that's what Joe Rogan said. Now I want to read you responses. I want to show you on the screen some responses to Joe Rogan because I thought they were quite amusing. So let's see here. Yes, is that it? Nope, that's not the one. Why is that up there? Let's try this again here. Why is everything not working right today? All right, let's see here. We're going to see what we've got going on here. Give me just a second because that was from yesterday's episode. It's always fun when technology doesn't work on you. And then you've got to try to figure it out on the fly and see what's going on. And I don't see let's see here. Let's try to go back to that. And then what in the world? Oh, okay. I see what happened. Okay. Give me just a second. I've got it figured out. And let's see here. All right. There we go. Okay. Bingo. There it is. All right. And let's do this. All right. So this one says, Lord, grant me the 1% of arrogance of a mediocre white man. Okay. She's the vice president of the United States, you stupid piece of poo. There are 7 days left. Kamala Harris does not need to spend 3 of her limited remaining hours satisfying this man-child who thinks he's more important than the many other people who could be hearing her in other forums. I'm sorry to all women that men are so effing galling. Very angry. F Joe Rogan and his alpha male BS. You're not too big of a deal to travel for an interview with the vice president. Anyone with a brain in their head knows you peaked on news radio. This is gonna kill the world tour level of douchiness. And then there's the I'm unwilling to travel to do an interview with the current VP of the United States for my podcast. Wow, the vice president of the United States, who is also running for president on the Dem ticket, has scheduling issues. That's crazy. She should honestly just cancel all her appointments to make sure she can appear on a podcast. The fact that there are living, breathing human beings in the United States right now that genuinely believe the vice president and Democratic nominee of the presidential election is somehow missing out for not being on the old Fear Factor host podcast is making my head hurt. Joe Rogan is expecting Harris to travel to a studio for a 3-hour interview in the last 7 days of the election is actually insane. You let someone pay people to eat testicles, and now they think they're more important than the vice president. The epitome of white male privilege is a podcast host thinking he can make demands of the sitting vice president instead of saying, thank you, ma'am. Where should I be? Okay, look, to every single one of those people, she is not the vice president, and she is the vice president. in terms of becoming the next president, she is a candidate. She's at the same level as Donald Trump, as Chase Oliver. She wants my vote and the vote of as many millions of Americans as she can get. Now, Joe Rogan has a podcast viewership of like, I think 11 million, like is the typical for his show, like 11 million people. There is no, I don't think there's a single other host of any show anywhere that will bring 11 million eyes and ears for 3 hours. None. I think he is the top tier. So you can say what you want about him. You can criticize his past. You can call him an alpha white male and all these other names. But at the end of the day, he has eyes and ears, and he has a lot of them. It doesn't matter whether you like him or not. He has them. And she is interviewing for a job. She is interviewing with the American people for a job. Now, in the same way, a while back in one of my other episodes, I criticized the candidate that I'm voting for, Chase Oliver, for not going on Tim Pool for the exact same reason. Eyes and ears. You go there. In his case, it was likely to be hostile, but sometimes you have to suck it up and do it. In Joe Rogan's case with Kamala Harris, it's not going to be hostile. So there's really no reason for it. It's literally we've all watched his shows. He just asks questions. He has when he said, I just want to have a conversation and get to know her better. We know he means it because we've seen his past shows. He's not a hostile interviewer. It's not what he does. He might ask you a tough question from time to time. He might push back, but it's not a hostile interview by any stretch of the imagination. So there's no reason for Kamala to not go any more than there was no reason for Chase Oliver to not go other than actual scheduling issues, right? Like if there's actually a scheduling, like if Joe Rogan says, hey, can you come to my studio on Thursday, October 31st? And if she says, I'm sorry, you're in Austin, Texas, and I have to be in, some other state. I have to be in New York. I have an event, and it's half the day long. And then after that, I've got scheduled appearances, that I'll be doing remotely. There's just no physical way for me to do it. That's fine. No big deal there. We do get it. But if you can make it, you should. And it doesn't matter whether you're the vice president or Chase Oliver, right? And I'm bringing him up because I criticized him in the past, and I want people to recognize that this is, as voters, if we want the best person for the job, we need to hold everybody accountable on the same grounds. Now, Trump went out and he managed to find time to go and interview with Joe Rogan. And I didn't watch it, so I don't know if it was a good interview. It's unlikely that there was going to be anything in there that would have changed my mind and wanted me, caught my attention to say, I'm going to go vote for him, right? But the fact is, he went because he recognized I need votes and I will do what I have to do to get a vote. Do I need to go play with a garbage truck? Then I will. Is it a political stunt? Yes, it is. Is it something that you do on the campaign trail? Yes, it is. That's what happens. And in my opinion, Kamala Harris, however you want to, vice president, she's not, in the way I look at it like this, I don't see her as the vice president when it's a matter of campaigning. Like that's, to me, you're not the vice president. You're the vice president when you're doing vice president stuff, when you're doing official business for the United States, for things that you were elected to do. That's when you're the vice president. But right now, campaigning, she's just Kamala Harris. And we can attach vice president, but the weight of that position it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter because you're asking us to vote for you. And if you can't figure out how to sit down with Joe Rogan, and it's not because I think Joe Rogan's super great. I do like him, but that's not why. I believe you go where the eyes and ears are when you're a candidate. And I've held that for all of our libertarian candidates. I will hold that for Republican candidates. I will hold that for Democrat candidates. And I will criticize them all the same, every single one of them. I criticized Chase and I said, look, you should have went to Tim Pool. I criticized Chase and I said, you should have went on Dave Smith when he offered it. In fact, if you go back and you watch the video where Chase Oliver came to Jacksonville and I interviewed him live, I asked him about Dave Smith. And he was like, well, I think he said, if I remember correctly, he said he didn't remember or didn't realize that Dave Smith had made the offer. And then I asked him, I said, okay, well, now that you know, are you willing to reach out and try to get on the show? And his answer was, well, Dave Smith can go and fill out a form. And I was like, no, I was like, dude, can you just reach out? And he was pussyfooting around about it. And he was, I was like, all right, well, I'm not giving him a hostile interview. I'm still critical of him. I think he should have absolutely went on Dave's. He should have reached out immediately and said, Mr. Smith, Dave, is that offer still open? I would love to come on your show. Right? Because again, you go where the eyes and the ears are. Why? Because when you're a candidate, you are an interviewee. You are seeking to get a job. You do in your realm the equivalent of what people like us do when we want a job. You put your best foot forward and you do everything you can to convince us that you're the person for the job. Everything, big and small. Because at the end of the day, would I love it if Americans only voted based on policy? Kind of. But is that going to happen? Not at all. What's going to happen is that voters are going to vote on a myriad of things. And some people were turned off by the Puerto Rican comment. And they might be like, you know what? If that's what you're going to deliver, then I don't want to have any part of you. Maybe they're going to stay home. Maybe they'll vote Kamala Harris. Maybe they'll vote Chase Oliver. I don't really know. But voters are fickle like that, right? They will vote for some. I said in my prior podcast that I voted for some Democrats here in Jacksonville just because I had a grudge against the establishment Republicans, right? That had nothing to do with policy, right? So even though I might want people to talk more about policy, I myself am a fickle voter. Everybody is at some level. And so for candidates, their job is to get elected. Their job is to convince us. And they should do whatever it takes to do that. Period. Garbage truck, interview, all of it. Figure it out. Win the hearts and minds. All right, that's my show, folks. Let's see if there's any more comments that I can address here real quick. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like this one. Here it is. Time Surfing Alien, largest podcast in the world. I believe it's true. But he peaked on news radio, right? Like, I don't even like some of these people. I don't even know what they're talking about. Like, he peaked on news radio. Did he have more than 11 million viewers in that realm? I don't know, but he has 11 million viewers, and he's the top podcast, if not the top, like really close to it, like the top 3. I haven't looked, but I'm sure he's up there, if not the top, right? So it's just crazy that people would even have this comment. And I don't think they realize that, yes, Joe Rogan has the upper hand here. He doesn't need Kamala Harris to come on his show. He didn't need Donald Trump to come on his show. He's been doing just fine without any of them. And he will continue to do just fine, whether he has them on or whether he does not. So the fact of the matter is they need him, all of them. They need him more than he needs them, period. It's a fundamental fact. All right, let's see what else we got here. That Liberty lady says, maybe if we abolish political parties, voters will start voting issues. Maybe, but probably not. Honestly, I just like people are like, if you go back to like the 1800s and you look at some of the things people were criticizing people over, they weren't issues then either. And they had far fewer issues to even worry about. I mean, they had issues, but their world was a little bit less complex, right? They didn't have like social media and all these other things, which, government and candidates wanted to run and micromanage and all this other good stuff, right? And there were things that like you could say nasty things about people and there wasn't huge mobs trying to cancel you and stuff like that. Like if you made a Puerto Rico joke, like some similar joke back in the 1800s, you weren't going to get the fury necessarily that you would today. Not in the same way, but it was pretty vicious, and it was also pretty unrelated to issues in many cases. I mean, who was it? Not Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson. When he married his wife, she was technically not divorced from her ex-husband, although she had been separated, and they just hadn't went through the formalities. And so everybody accused her, the political opponents accused them of being bigamist, right? And that was a big deal in that day. So, I don't know. I mean, I would like to believe that, but honestly, I think just by looking over history, I think that there will be a lot about related to the issues, but there will be a whole lot more related to just, it's that old saying, is this a candidate that I would like to sit and have a beer with? I think that's going to be, 60, 70% of how voters will decide. Do they like the candidate? And then there will be some issues, that play a role, some more, some less. So, all right, folks, that's my show for today. Hope you enjoyed it, found it informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer, my Rumble channel. You can go to youtube.libertydad.com or rumble.libertydad.com. While you're there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. Last but not least, I want you to remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.